From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast, Thursday, February 6th, 2025. A busy show with all of y'all today, so we're going to get right into it this morning. But before we do, if you haven't subscribed to cyberhubpodcast.com, please do so. You get a full version, a written version, not a transcript, but really a good summary with action items directly in your inbox just shortly after we get off the air here. So go sign up for that. And now, without further ado, we've got a packed show talking about Deepseek again. We've got a whole bunch of CISA orders coming through, North Korea, Spain, and Deloitte, all on our task list today of items to address. Join me for a coffee cup cheers. I've got my double espresso. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. Brilliant. We'll start off. I can't talk this morning. We'll start off with the website of Deepseek, whose chatbot was really the most downloaded app in the US. Does have a computer code in it that does send some user login information to a Chinese state-owned telecom company that's been barred from operating in the US, according to security researchers. In their privacy policy, Deepseek does acknowledge that they store data on servers inside the People's Republic of China. But its chatbot appears more directly tied to the Chinese state than previously known through the link revealed by researchers to China Mobile. The U.S. has claimed that there are close ties between China Mobile and the Chinese military as justification for placing limited sanctions on the company. And the growth of Chinese digital services globally is actually causing a lot of concern for many lawmakers, including those in Congress and overseas, as we saw Italy banning Deepseek and other countries joining the list as well. So the analysis only applies to the web version of Deepseek. They did not analyze the mobile version, which remains one of the most downloaded pieces of software on both the Apple and Google App Stores. The FCC unanimously denied China Mobile's authority to operate in the U.S. in 2019, citing substantial national security concerns about links between the company and the Chinese state. In 2021, President Biden issued sanctions limiting the ability of Americans to invest in China Mobile after the Pentagon linked it to Chinese military. So all in all, we're seeing the interconnection. And in this whole Deepseek thing, I've always talked about everything in China is connected. Nothing is done off of a whim. There's no free enterprise in China. There's a kind of fully backed solution by the Chinese government to go out there, and all those business are interconnected. We saw that Deepseek had some connections to ByteDance, the owners of TikTok. We now see China Mobile. And if you don't think that's all part of one larger data collection, kind of data analysis move by the Chinese, you're sorely mistaken, and I believe your naivety will end up hindering your ability to actually see what's happening out there. The idea here is that as more digital items become of China, kind of like what we saw with, and you see that with e-commerce, right? With Timo and all of these things, cheap knockoffs, really designed to kind of tell you, hey, here's a few bucks and buy something. The same applies here. Here's Deepseek, and I was watching a video yesterday that someone sent me on Instagram, and I didn't get permission from the person who put it out to share it on the podcast yet. They did not reply to my message. I wanted to share it with all y'all this morning, and so I didn't want to share it without them knowing. So they were actually on the chat bot asking questions, and it kept referring to ChatGPT 4. So it appears that Deepseek did really bite off some of the IP of OpenAI and ChatGPT, and it's also interconnected to a whole bunch of Chinese. The Chinese don't invent stuff, they steal. They're really, really good at stealing IP and developing it themselves. And then once they have the idea, they're really good at kind of doing continuous improvement much, much faster, because essentially the Chinese government is the best social engineering government on the planet, in that aspect of the way they manipulate the 1.2 billion members of the 1.2 million citizens of their nation. So there's that there as well. When we talk about new ways to fight cybercrime, Thailand's come up with a whole new method of just doing that. Thailand is cutting off power supply yesterday to 3 areas in Myanmar where online scamming hubs are concentrated. The cuts to fuel, internet, and electricity are targeting scam hubs of Mayawati, Payatenzu, and Tachlik, whose criminal syndicate have set up enclaves devoted to fraud. Last week, China's Assistant Minister of Public Security met with the Thai Commissioner of the Cybercrime Investigation Bureau, where he reportedly called on the Thai government to do more to stop scamming activity in Myanmar. Thailand is a frequent transit route for people trafficked and forced to work in these scam compounds. Songoy reportedly informed the CCIB that 36 Chinese scamming gangs were known to be employing more than 10,000 workers in compounds. They have it listed like 100,000, but it's 10. He also cited the viral case of Chinese actor Wang Jing, who went missing in Thailand in early January before being rescued from the notorious Shui Kuku scam hub across the border in Mayawati. That case sparked a flurry of activity on part of the Thai government to try to prove that the country is safe for tourists and that it's cracking down on gangs. Thailand's National Security Council and other government agencies met to discuss whether or not to cut off the power supply to certain border areas on security grounds, and they did just that. If you don't have power, you can't scam people. Interesting approach. The move to slow operations at scamming compounds coincides with a 4-day visit to China by the Thai premier, where the Thai prime minister will meet dictator Xi Jinping and other leaders in the communist nation. Chinese Foreign Ministry Lin Jian said Wednesday that China attaches great importance to combating the recent string of cross-border telecom fraud and other vicious cases along the Thailand-Myanmar border. And as you can tell, Chinese gangs trying to take advantage of China operating out of those regions. So China has its own problems to deal with when it comes to cyber scams, not just being the perpetrator, but also being the victim. And the chickens always come home to roost. So there's that for China. CISA has ordered federal agencies to secure their systems within 3 weeks against the high severity Linux kernel flaw that's being actively exploited in attacks. The kernel is the CVE is 2024-53104. This was the kernel version 2.6.26. We talked about it on the show yesterday. So now this has made it to the CISA must patch list. Cisco also on Wednesday announced patches for multiple vulnerabilities, including 2 critical severity flaws in the Identity Services Engine Enterprise Security Solution. Those CVEs 2025-20124 and 20125 impact the ISC APIs, which could allow a remote attacker authenticated with read-only admin privileges to execute arbitrary commands on vulnerable devices. Again, these are high complexity attacks. So the attacker would have to be a remote attacker that's authenticated. They would have to have read-only admin privileges in order to actually take advantage of these different CVEs here. And then because user-supplied Java byte streams are insecurely deserialized, CVE 20124 has a CVSS score of 9.9 and would allow an attacker to send crafted serialized Java objects to the vulnerable API to execute arbitrary commands and elevate privileges. And 20125 has a CVSS score of 9.1, and it's due to lack of authorization in an API and improper validation of user input. Again, we live in a world of interconnected APIs, so you're going to see these. They're going to become more common. You got to have a good playbook to address these. All of these have been now patched up, so go ahead and get those on your patch list as soon as possible. CISA also adding 4 additional vulnerabilities to its KEV catalog, urging federal agencies and large organizations to apply the available security updates as soon as humanly possible. Among the flaws that are impacting Microsoft.NET Framework and Apache OF Biz, 2 widely used software applications. The first flaw is CVE 2024-29059. It's a high severity information disclosure bug in the .NET Framework discovered by Code White and disclosed to Microsoft back in November of 2023. It's now being actively exploited, so unpatched systems are vulnerable. In February, Code White released technical details and proof of concept exploit for leaking internal object URIs, which can be used to perform a .NET remoting attack. Microsoft released a full advisory back in March of 2024. The Apache OF BIS flaw CVE 2024-45195. It's a critical severity 9.8 on the CVSS scale, remote code execution vulnerability that impacts OF BIS before 18.12.16. So you want to make sure you're not on that version. You want to be on any later version. Users are recommended to upgrade there because of these risks as well. North Korea-linked nation-state attacking group known as Comiskey has been observed conducting spear phishing attacks, delivering information stealer malware named Force Copy, according to new findings by the AN Labs Security Intelligence Center. The attacks commenced with phishing emails containing a Windows shortcut file that's disguised as a Microsoft Office or PDF document. Opening the attachment triggers an execution of a PowerShell or an exe, a legitimate Microsoft binary designed to run HTML application files that are responsible for downloading and operating next-stage payloads from an external source. So something to keep in mind there. The South Korean cybersecurity company said the attacks culminated in the deployment of a known Trojan dubbed Pebbled Ash and a custom version of an open-source remote desktop utility named RDP Wrapper. So all in all, we're seeing more activities there from Comiskey as well. And then cyber criminals are increasingly leveraging legitimate HTTP client tools to facilitate account takeover attacks on Microsoft 365 environments. Proofpoint said it observed campaigns using HTTP clients Axios and Node Fetch to send HTTP requests and receive HTTP responses from web servers with the goal of conducting ATO attacks. They're originally sourced from public repositories like GitHub. These tools are increasingly used in attacks like adversary in the middle, brute force techniques, and leading to numerous account takeover incidents, according to Anna Akselovich. The use of HTTP client tools for brute force attacks has long been an observed trend since at least February of 2018. So a lot of volume here. The Axios campaign is set to have primarily singled out high-value targets like executives, financial officers, account managers, and operational staffs in transportation, construction, finance, IT, and healthcare verticals. So again, just all over the place. You got to be mindful of these types of attacks. In Good Guys Prevail, the Spanish police have arrested a suspected attacker and threat actor in El Caliente for allegedly conducting 40 different cyber attacks that targeted critical public and private organizations, including the Guardia Civil, the Ministry of Defense, NATO, the U.S. Army, and various universities. Spanish media reports that the suspect was brought before court and subsequently released after having his passport confiscated to prevent him from leaving the country. Anyone who's ever been to Europe knows you don't need a passport to drive across the borders. Using up to 3 different pseudonyms, the suspect attacked international governmental organizations, accessing database containing personal information of employees and customers, as well as internal documents, and later sold them on these forums. Apart from the Madrid organizations, they've said that the National Mint and Stamp Factory, the State Public Employment Service, the Ministry of Education, Vocational Training and Sports, various Spanish universities, NATO and U.S. Army databases, the Directorate General, a whole bunch of organizations. And they arrest this guy, take his passport, and say, go on and be fruitful. Europeans never learn. Deloitte paid $5 million to the state of Rhode Island for expenses related to the RI Bridge social services system data breach back in December, according to Governor Dan McKee's office. Deloitte, which manages the RI Bridges program, is separately paying for the cost of a call center, credit monitoring, and identity protection services for customers affected by the breach. Deloitte has recognized that the state has immediate and unexpected expenses related to the breach, and they're lending financial support. They manage the program. Technically, I haven't looked at the contract, but they probably are responsible for this. So Brain Cipher is the group behind the attack on Rhode Island bridges. So we're seeing Deloitte here fronting the cost. That's it for our show today. We'll be back Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern with all the latest and greatest. Make sure to go check out CyberHubPodcast.com, Saturday articles, as well as some of our paid content. About 4 to 6 weeks after it's paid, like after it reaches the paid status, it becomes free. You see those on Sundays, by the way. So when you subscribe, you do. Even if you're not a paid member of our website, you still are able to get some of the paid content at a later date. So go check that out. Make sure to subscribe, follow, share, like, comment. And if you have any stories whatsoever, you can always submit those at our Proton mail unanimously, and we'll take a look at them there. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend, y'all. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.